is expounded in the Lankavatara. When the Lankavatara is studied apart from its connection with the philosophy of Zen Buddhism, it is usually as one of the textbooks of the Yogacara school. As was already stated in the first part of the present work. This was done very early in the history of the sutra when the Chinese Buddhist scholars belonging to the school of the Mahayana Parisagraha Sastra attempted to interpret the sutra according to Asanga's teaching. Whether this view is correct or not is another question. But the fact is that the sutra contains the theories relating to the so-called psychological explanation of existence such as the doctrine of Systematised and the system of 8 Vijnanas, which also make up the contents of the Yogacara philosophy. To complete, therefore, the study of the Lankavatara, these theories are also to be examined even though cursorily. Next, the doctrine of emptiness or no birth is the foundation of Mahayana Buddhism. It is not necessarily confined to the Madhyamika school of Nagarjuna, though this has been exaggerated too far so that some scholars are led to regard emptiness as the exclusive property of this school. The fact as it stands is that it is a common possession of all the Buddhist schools, psychological as well as logical. The Lankavatara is thus insistent too on the doctrine of emptiness. Indeed, as much as the Prajnaparamita Sutras, only it uses the term no birth or unborn, more frequently than emptiness or vacuity. Both connote the same thing, and are quite interchangeable. A chapter has thus been reserved in this book for the treatment of this idea as expounded in the Lankavatara. The question of Buddhahood is another important idea in a work claiming to elucidate the Lankavatara in its various aspects. Not only is its conception of the Tathagata to be examined but also that of the triple body. Though these two are closely related indeed, they are two sides of the same shield. I think it best to treat them separately. The doctrine of the iple body is not yet formally systematized in the sutra, as is for example in the Suvara-prabhasa, which has a special chapter devoted to the treatment of the subject. The adumbration of the theory is, however, clearly traceable in the Lankavatara. I have tried to make the point clear in the following pages apart from the notion of Tathagatahood. The 4 topics have thus been chosen as requiring special consideration in the Lankavatara when it is dissociated from the teaching of Zen Buddhism, which are the doctrine of mind only, the dogma of the triple body, and the Tathagata. These, however, do not exhaust the whole range of thoughts finding expression in the Lankavatara. There is more material which may claim room in these studies. No doubt, what is left after the 4 topics just mentioned and outside its connection with Zen, is not so weighty as to require any extensive treatment, as far as the sutra itself is concerned. The last chapter is then devoted to these minor subjects. The 1 vehicle and the 3 vehicles, the 5 fatal sins, the 6 paramitas, the 4 jhanas, and meat eating. 1. The doctrine of mind only, one of the principal theories in the sutra. Something about the doctrine of mind only has already been stated. But more will have to be written about it if the Lankavatara is to be treated as an independent Mahayana sutra, not necessarily in connection with the teaching of Zen Buddhism. There is no doubt that the purpose of compiling the sutra was, on the part of the author or editor, to emphasize the all-importance of the self-realization of the truth in its practical bearing on the life of the bodhisattva. But when self-realization is to be given its content so that the experience becomes communicable, that is, when it is made the subject of a philosophical discourse, something more has to be said. The mere statement of the fact that the truth realized in the inmost consciousness constitutes the reason of the Buddhist life, is altogether too inadequate to convince other people. The Lankavatara has to be more than an utterance of the inner experience. To be consistent with the general philosophical tradition of Mahayana Buddhism, it has to advocate the doctrine of mind only. We may, therefore, say that the teaching of Zen Buddhism, philosophically stated, is a pure idealism. This chapter will now be devoted to an elucidation of the Lankavatara doctrine of mind only. What is then meant by the mind only? Let me quote some gathas relative to the subject. When things existent are regarded as being free from the bondage of mutual dependence, there is decidedly nothing but mind. I say, nothing but mind. Mind is the measure of all things, it is the abode of their self-nature, and has nothing to do with causation and the world. It is perfect in its nature, absolutely pure. This is the measure indeed, I say. The worldly way of thinking views the mind as the individual self, but there is no such substantial reality. So with the substance of the skandhas, the worldly way of thinking views it as real. In reality it has no existence. There are 4 sorts of sameness for those who discipline themselves in religious life. Appearance, causation, coming into existence, and the 4th is egolessness. Mind is beyond all philosophical views, is apart from discrimination, it is not attainable, nor is it ever born. I say, there is nothing but mind. It is not an existence, nor is it a non-existence. It is indeed beyond both existence and non-existence. It is suchness, it is even released from mind. I say, there is nothing but mind. Suchness, emptiness, the limit, nirvana, dharmadhatu, variety of will bodies, they are nothing but mind, I say. Out of mind spring innumerable things, conditioned by discrimination and habit energy. These things people accept as an external world. I say, there is nothing but mind. What appears to be external does not exist in reality, it is indeed mind that is seen as multiplicity. The body, property, and abode, all these, I say, are nothing but mind. In the Sagatharkam, we have the following stanzas. When the mind only is understood, external objects are set aside. Discrimination ceases. And we have the middle way. There is the mind only, there are no objects to be seen. When there are no objects to see, mind is not born. And this is called by myself and others the middle way. Without being born they are seen as born. They are not dead but are seen as dead. They are simultaneously visible in myriads of countries even as the moon is reflected in many waters. One is seen as many, they make it rain, they ignite fires, as is willed by their minds. So they declare that there is the mind only. To say the mind only is by mind, is also born of mind. Particular forms and figures in all possible varieties, when thoroughly understood, are no more than mind itself. Of Buddhas, Sravaka forms, Pratyekabuddha forms, and other various forms, it is declared by them that they are nothing but mind. Their forms, although really of no form, are seen as having forms by all beings from the world of no form down to the hells. They are nothing but the workings of mind itself. Single quote. From these quotations, some of which are more shrouded in obscurity than others, the reader may gain a general idea as to what the doctrine of mind only means. The Sutra sometimes makes summary statements like these. 1. Citta-matra lokam. 2. Citta-bhahyad asanam. 3. Svachita-matram tradhatukam. 4. Satahi tradhatuka yoni. 5. Trivavachita-matram. Opening parenthesis. The triple existence is nothing but mind. 6. Citta hi sarvam. Sagatharkam. 7. Savarupavabhkasa ki yada citta pravartate. Opening parenthesis. When mind evolves, all forms are manifested. Closing parenthesis. Sagatha Kam. Speaking in the modern way, the theory of mind only is a form of pure idealism. All that we habitually consider having an objective value, such as our own body, property, and the land where we have our abodes, are no more than our own mind projected and recognized as externally extending and real. Even nirvana, the truth of suchness, emptiness, reality, all these are but our mental creations, having no objective validity as far as they are forms of discrimination. We, ordinary mortals, see the Buddha in his multifarious manifestations, which, however, are the reflections of our ideas formulated in the mind by virtue of inherited memory mysteriously working from time immemorial. Passages quoted relative to the doctrine. The doctrine of mind only runs through the Lankavatara as if it were warp and weft of the Sutra. To understand it is to realize the ultimate truth, and not to understand it is to transmigrate through many a birth and death. The Sutra lays much emphasis on the importance of the doctrine, so much, indeed, that it makes everything hinge on this one point, the salvation of the world, not to say anything of the individual. Read the following passages culled at random from the Sutra. 1. The mind only leads to the realization of the ultimate truth. Language, O Mahamati, is not the ultimate truth. What is attainable by language is not the ultimate truth. Why? Because the ultimate truth is what is enjoyed by the wise. By means of speech one can enter into the truth, but words themselves are not the truth. It is the self-realization inwardly experienced by the wise through their supreme wisdom, and does not belong to the domain of words, discrimination, or intelligence. And, therefore, discrimination does not reveal the ultimate truth itself. Moreover, O Mahamati, language is subject to birth and destruction, is unsteady, mutually conditioning, and produced according to the law of causation. And what is mutually conditioning and produced according to the law of causation is not the ultimate truth,